Mario & Luigi Brothership is the long-awaited return of the Mario & Luigi series. With its original developer filing for bankruptcy in 2019, and the last two installments being remakes, it's been nearly a decade since we've gotten a new game in the series. Some might say, as a Mario sub-series, it was inevitable it would return, but the series producer Akira Otani admitted himself that they came close to retiring the Mario & Luigi series altogether. Suffice to say, fans of the series were unbelievably excited about this game's existence. I myself could not even believe it was happening. It took a while before it even felt real. As the game neared its release, major publications started putting out their reviews. It had fairly average reception. It averaged 77 on Metacritic, not the highest rated game in the series, but a score that indicates the game is still quite good, but definitely could use improvement. What stuck out to me and many others was the IGN review. They gave the game a score of 5 out of 10, which is the lowest they've rated any game in the series. Naturally, I was curious as to why it was rated so low compared to the others in the series, but I decided not to read their review until after I played the game. I wanted to avoid spoilers and preconceived expectations of what the game would be. Basically, I wanted to make sure that my thoughts and feelings about the game weren't influenced by other sources. I wanted to see it from my own perspective. I'm glad I knew about the review score though, because that allowed me to go into the game with a more critical mindset. I didn't want to blindly love this game and just see past its flaws. I wanted to thoroughly assess it and see what I felt worked, what didn't work, and what I would have changed. I played through the game nearly 100%ing it, and throughout the making of this video have been doing a second playthrough for footage, fact-checking, checking out the problems the reviewer mentioned now that I've actually read the review, and also just because I really like playing the game. Not to mention that there's multiple points in the game where different actions change the story in subtle ways, and I was curious to see the other outcomes I didn't experience in my first playthrough. I can now confidently say that IGN's review of the game is very flawed, filled with things said in bad faith, misinformation, double standards, and completely misunderstanding the way the game works. And I hope to illustrate all the problems with the review in this video. I'd also like to say before we get into this that I myself do have problems with the game. It's in no way perfect, and I don't intend to treat it as such. To start, let's listen to a segment from the review.
Speaking of kids, several choices in Brothership make it feel like baby's first RPG. It probably will be for plenty of kids out there, so that isn't inherently a bad thing, but this is the rare game starring Mario that feels designed specifically for ages 6 to 12, rather than ages 6 to 66. The tutorials and dialogue are constantly holding your hand. For example, almost any time you enter a new area, the camera slowly pans over to your objective and slowly pans back, followed by an excruciatingly long explanation from new assistant named Snoutlet, who basically spells out exactly what you need to do. The dialogue repeatedly reminds you of the overarching story and objective, and Brothership spends far too much time of its already bloated 34-hour runtime rehashing the same tired notes. I lost count of how many times new characters were shocked to learn Mario and Luigi were on a mission to reconnect all of Concordia's islands. Plus, the large font size means only roughly a dozen words tops can fit into a single dialogue bubble, so you're always mashing the A button to get to the next line in these insufferably long scenes.
Saying the tutorials constantly hold your hand, there is a lot wrong with that already. This game actually might have the best tutorials in the series. And while I could get into specifics and explain it, I think it's more impactful to show you that I've been playing the basic battle tutorials from Partners in Time in the background since this video started. Not only has it not finished, but Partners in Time is unique for the series because 3 minutes after the first tutorial, you get to learn the same thing again, this time teaching you to press A instead of pressing X. Also teaching the player to counterattack. That wasn't in the first tutorial. Now here's all of those same tutorials one after another, but at 32 times speed. Now here's the tutorials from Brothership that go over these same mechanics. You just read what to do, you try it out yourself, and the game respects your intelligence. I think it goes without saying which of these two examples holds the player's hand. Combat tutorials aside, the reviewer also says that it's hand-holding to show the player what the objective is. I find this part interesting because as I was doing research into this reviewer, I found this footage of him saying Dragon Quest XI is the best JRPG of all time.
Dragon Quest XI.
I haven't finished that.
Yeah,
best JRPG of all time.
And that game always shows you exactly where to go on the map, so you might wonder why it's okay when that game does it. Well, the challenge isn't to find out what the objective is, it's to do that objective. The challenge comes from everything in between, like Mario & Luigi Brothership. Super Mario Odyssey does this exact same thing, and it's the reviewer's favorite Mario game of all time. Additionally, why wouldn't the characters talk about the overarching story and objective when it's what they're currently engaged in? And again, this is something seen in every game in the series, and in Dragon Quest XI.
Surely he speaks of the rainbow. I will discuss the rainbow with my father. I will go immediately to my father and ask about the rainbow. I will speak to my father about the rainbow. I will speak with my father about the rainbow. 1,000 pardons. The rainbow will have to wait. My friends here have come to Gallopolis in search of the rainbow. These travelers came to Gallopolis in search of the rainbow.
But my boy, I sold the rainbow.
I did not know that the rainbow was no longer in the kingdom.
Most games in general, really. I fail to see how this is even criticism. Honestly, this whole thing is ridiculous. In this segment, he pretty much admits to rushing through everything because he's just mashing through all the dialogue instead of actually caring to read it. Aside from that completely disqualifying the reviewer from being able to give an honest review of the story and writing, large text is an accessibility thing, and not everyone has a giant TV to play these things on. I myself have 20/20 vision, and still have played games where I felt the text was hard to read because it's too small. I've had lots of friends complain about games having text that's too small, but I've never once heard someone complain that I have to press the button too often to skip text. If you're playing a game of this genre and don't care about the story, you're gonna have to repeatedly press a button in order to skip text. If you're skipping text, you're gonna have to mash some buttons. It comes with the territory. It also applies to every other game in the series. You wouldn't think pressing buttons a lot would be an arduous task for a professional video game reviewer, but here we are. And sure, not every player will want to read the text in an RPG, but to say it's a bad thing for the text to be big and legible because it makes you have to press the button to advance text more often, it really comes off as a nitpick. Like, oh no, the text is too legible! It's so easy to read! How could they?
I would be more forgiving of the overwhelming amount of text if the humor and story were on point, but unfortunately the writing just doesn't land. The Mario RPGs all attempt to strike a humorous and whimsical tone to varying degrees of success, but Brothership's comedy mostly lies in repetitive bits and intentionally unfunny puns and dad jokes where the punchline is watching Mario and Luigi stare blankly in an awkward silence. Snoutlet's primary joke is telling everyone he meets that he's definitely not a pig, while the main villain's bit is not remembering anyone's name, which is another unfunny joke that's beaten into the ground well before Brothership stops returning to it. Again, this game lasts for dozens of hours, and those jokes never evolve or get any better.
I'll give you this, the awkward silence bit was a little frequent. I thought sometimes it was entertaining, and other times it didn't hit me. I personally didn't care about that, as they don't linger on them and the dialogue's very quick. In fact, the game lets you fast forward pretty much every single scene where you're not in control of Mario and Luigi. For how much the review complains about dialogue and cutscenes, I feel it's misleading to not also bring up that you can fast forward nearly all dialogue and skip most cutscenes. Withholding that information paints the picture that the game doesn't allow the player to do that, when it's actually a possible solution to the problem the reviewer describes. I also personally liked the joke of Zocket getting characters' names wrong, and it didn't feel like the joke was repetitive because he kept saying different names. It's important to point out that the joke isn't there just to be funny. It illustrates how Zocket's entire character is that he can't be bothered to connect with anyone. He can't even bring himself to care about who it is he's fighting and who it is he's working with.
Brothership makes an admirable attempt at telling a story about the importance of friendship and connections and the dangers of isolation, but it's another area where the idea is better than the execution. The writing is just so unoriginal, and I didn't get attached to any of Brothership's large cast in the same way I have with so many characters and partners from past Mario RPGs. Some of that may come down to character design. I love how Mario and Luigi look in this cartoony art style, and many of the enemies look great too, but the friendly, power outlet-shaped residents of Concordia just didn't resonate with me. Granted, it's nice to see original characters back in a Mario and Luigi game after Paper Jam toadified everything, but these designs are just a bit too rudimentary for my taste, and their blocky look clashes with the style of Mario, Luigi, and other characters and enemies from the Mushroom Kingdom that show up.
I would also go as far as to say that it's a poor complaint to say that the Concordians' blocky looks are too much of a contrast between Mario and Luigi. This is a completely different world than Mario and Luigi are from, essentially another dimension. The last Mario game to really do something like this was Super Paper Mario, which similarly had tons of NPCs that completely clashed with Mario and friends. This is done intentionally to illustrate the differences between Mario's world and Concordia. This isn't Mario's world, and it should feel alien in comparison to Mario's world. That said, I also really don't think they stick out that much. Aside from Toads, most NPCs in Mario games look pretty distinct from other Mario characters anyway. Like, do any of these look particularly out of place? They're all pretty weird and distinct from each other. That's kind of the beauty of the Mario series. Its worlds are so weird and varied that they can kinda do whatever they want with the character designs and it won't feel out of place. They can look different for sure, but not to the point where you feel like you're playing something that just feels like a hodgepodge of random assets. I also genuinely don't understand what the reviewer meant when he said the writing is unoriginal, but maybe I would if he elaborated on that or gave examples. Interestingly, I do think it's funny that the reviewer grouped Mario and Luigi together with every other inhabitant of the Mushroom Kingdom, because main characters like Mario and Luigi do have unique designs compared to other modern Mario games, more resembling how they look in other Mario and Luigi games. But a complaint I specifically had was that when they introduce more characters from the Mushroom Kingdom, their designs are nearly identical to how they look in regular Mario games, instead of being given slight redesigns to fit into the more cartoony aesthetic. Like, compare Luigi's model here to his model in Super Mario Party Jamboree. And now do the same with Spike.
The whole adventure would probably pop more if it didn't run so badly. This is easily one of the worst performing Nintendo games on Switch. Worse than Link's Awakening, but not quite to the level of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, with incessant frame rate issues while exploring the overworld. Brothership chugs and stutters basically anytime there's some sort of environmental element present, whether it's moving water, lava, sand, wind, or fog. That's a pretty major problem for a quest set entirely on the ocean. It's not only unpleasant to look at, it can cause issues during some platforming segments that require precisely timed jumps. Performance is more reliable during the smaller amount of time when you're inside a dungeon or building, and I noticed the frame rate wasn't quite as bad when playing in handheld mode. But if you were looking forward to the Mario and Luigi series finally making the jump to a home console, I'm sorry to report that I simply didn't enjoy playing Brothership on my television, and I don't recommend it.
Pretty much the only noticeable performance issues were late game on the main hub island. As throughout the game, the more people you meet, the more the island develops and the livelier it gets. So naturally, if the game has a lot more NPCs and objects out at once, it'll drop frames on occasion. I specifically didn't care about this at all because the hub is where that kind of thing matters the least. There's no precision platforming, no frame-perfect actions I have to take, no combat. It's just walking around and talking to people. Obviously, this is more of an opinionated thing, but I've never understood people saying things like frame drops break immersion. Like, do you really have such a low ability to suspend your disbelief that if the game doesn't look smooth for a few seconds, it ruins your experience? To me, that feels like saying, this movie was bad because someone in the theater was clearing his throat too loudly. If performance issues are so bad to the point that you're constantly missing inputs and the game is skipping like a record, then yes, that should affect your score on it. But acting like Mario and Luigi Brothership's performance affects the gameplay in any meaningful way is simply wrong. I also feel like it's just disingenuous to say the worlds are generic, because they're deserts and forests and things like that. The general idea of a desert is generic, sure, but what matters is what you do with it. The first desert area was not at all what I was expecting. It reminded me of chapters in the older Paper Mario games. Instead of what you'd expect, this island is mostly focused on an abandoned town, where you have to play hide and seek with a bunch of kids in order to proceed. Those kids also stick around and are major supporting characters throughout the whole game. I expected them to be comic relief and not much more, but there were lots of times in the story where they help out, and I think, wow, I don't know how Mario and Luigi would have gotten through this without them.
9/11.
Anyway, regardless of that, the game has a lot of unique areas like this, where while the kind of setting could be seen as overused, the way it's implemented is unique. Bulbfish Island is a great example of this. You have to investigate to find out who's been stealing the bulbfish eggs in order to help these star-crossed lovers clear their names. And this couple actually hints to later areas in the game, which also have a lot of unique ideas and scenarios. The review also neglects to mention the more unique islands, like the one with the skyscraper, where you have to infiltrate your way in and spy on the villains, and look for clues to find passwords to proceed. the one with all the bouncy flowers, the one that's a giant amusement park, the one that houses a huge dance club, the one full of sculptors that decorate the entire island, the one that's a town for all of Bowser's minions. There's genuine variety here. The review says most of the game's side quests are just overbearing fetch quests. Even though I don't really think that's the truth on a gameplay level, I think it's important to talk about what these quests do narratively. They all come down to the central idea that to be alive is to connect with people. Everyone has some desire to connect with people around them in different ways. I'll talk more about the story a little later. I want to save it for the end of the video since it'll contain spoilers, but I think the side quests genuinely enhance the game's overall theme and story. And I also did find them fun. I guess it's kind of a matter of, if you find the game fun, you're gonna enjoy experiencing more of it, and if you don't, you're gonna resent it.
Luigi takes the L. As a longtime fan of this series, though, I would have been able to tolerate a lot of technical roughness if it meant I was getting what I came for. Brothership isn't outright bad in a vacuum, but it's particularly disappointing because it fundamentally misunderstands the best elements of its own series, specifically in how it completely mishandles Luigi. In past Mario and Luigi adventures, Luigi follows right behind his older brother, and you platform and solve puzzles with the two of them as a unit. A to jump as Mario and B to jump as Luigi. When they split up, you seamlessly swap back and forth between the two. In Brothership's overworld, though, Luigi feels more like an NPC ally than a second protagonist. He follows Mario at a disconnected, awkward distance, he can jump on his own without the press of a button, and many puzzles revolve around simply ordering Luigi to automatically do something for you. This approach is no worse than follower characters in other RPGs, but it loses the unique style of previous games and feels so watered down as a result. The odd thing is that certain areas seem like they were designed for the old style and are now rendered completely pointless. The worst instances are platforming segments where Mario needs to jump on the red platforms and Luigi follows suit on the green ones. Once you've moved Mario to where he needs to go, you just twiddle your thumbs as Luigi does his part automatically. There's no fun in watching half the puzzle get solved by a computer, especially when this series was traditionally built on gameplay that made the most of having two equal characters at your disposal.
Twiddle your thumbs. My brother in Christ, it takes 2 seconds maximum for Luigi to do his part. I genuinely think that the only one here who misunderstands the best elements of the series is the reviewer himself. I think Brothership has Luigi controlled automatically specifically because of how complex Luigi's involvement is in this game compared to the rest of the series. Despite what the reviewer says here, the only game in the series where Mario and Luigi regularly split up from each other was the first game in the series. Usually this is only for a segment that lasts less than a minute, aside from the penultimate area of the game, which revolves around the idea of Mario and Luigi splitting up. Kind of like how the final area of Mario and Luigi Brothership is also built around the idea of Mario and Luigi splitting up. And I don't think seamlessly switching between them matters at all, because in something like Superstar Saga, it just equates to you switching to Mario, walking where you need to go, then switching back to Luigi and walking where he needs to go. The only difference now is that you have these blocks that allow you to switch between them, which are conveniently placed in every area where you would want to switch between them. The other games in the series usually have Mario and Luigi stick together, and a third party separate from them can help solve a puzzle. Think of these areas in Partners in Time. You need to throw the babies into this tree stump so they can hit this block that moves this platform over a pit of spikes. Really, the only thing that's different now is that you don't have the hassle of positioning a character so they can perform an action when separated from Mario. Bowser's Inside Story fixed this by making it so most puzzles like this are inside of Bowser's body. Whenever you're inside Bowser's body as Mario and Luigi for an extended period of time, Bowser himself doesn't need to be controlled, except in minor instances that change the environment for Mario and Luigi. For example, drinking water as Bowser will make water appear in this area. Stopping will remove the water. This is a more streamlined version of that idea from Partners in Time, where one character's actions affect the other. But in Bowser's Inside Story, you didn't need to put Bowser there to find the water. The game just already has him at the water when you're at the point in the game that needs it. Mario and Luigi Dream Team similarly streamlines the puzzles that involve multiple different parties. When Mario is in the dream world, you can interact with the environment by touching different parts of Luigi on the bottom screen. There aren't always things to interact with, but Luigi will always remain on the bottom screen if you need to utilize him. When Brothership has Luigi walk to a switch that he needs to hit for Mario to progress, it's the exact same idea in a different form. Now this is the fun part. This is the part where the reviewer, despite saying that the game is for little kids and the puzzles are too easy, gets really mad that the puzzles are not easy.
There are even segments where he will actively work against you. Like when you need to step on numbered panels in order, but Luigi, bafflingly, doesn't wait to step on his number before you stepped on yours. This leads to completely contrived, unbelievable sequences where you need to beat out your own partner so he doesn't fail the puzzle for you both.
For this Luigi logic counting puzzle, he's genuinely saying he wants the puzzle to just be counting to 24. How is it even a puzzle or a challenge to just go to the number panels in the order they tell you? Literally all of the fun and challenge from this puzzle is how Luigi, quote, works against you, but he's not working against you. He's going to his panels in his order, and you have to get to your panels before he skips over your number. It's fun and challenging. You really need to be on your toes and focus. You have to identify the next number Mario needs to get to, and try to get there quickly enough to press it before Luigi gets to his next number. Maybe if the reviewer had a better connection with Luigi, he would be better at this, but as it stands, I feel like he's actively working against Luigi rather than the other way around. And I mean this sincerely. Instead of thinking he works against you, the point of these segments is to figure out how to work alongside Luigi, how to make sure you don't work against each other.
One of Brothership's main new mechanics is called Luigi Logic, but it's essentially just a lengthy animation where Luigi has an epiphany that I had to sit through a double-digit number of times across the campaign. Generally, it results in Luigi just telling you how to progress, often by using bros moves like turning into a UFO or rolling into a ball, or worse, he just does it for you. Brothership feels stuck between adhering to the old style and trying something new, and it fails at both by landing uncomfortably in the middle.
There were moments where I wasn't entertained during the game, like some of those moments that the review mentions where there's an awkward silence. But personally, I think that ultimately a few seconds taken out of a 50-hour experience is a pretty good trade-off. And I'm not even trying to be mean here when I say this, but if this is the way you think about a video game, then I don't really understand why you would have this as your career. Because this is what video games do. They take up time, but they use that time to try to engage you. It's a gamble whether or not you will be engaged, but something like an animation taking too long genuinely affecting a review score? That doesn't really make any sense. I understand that all art is subjective, and subjectivity has to be a part of this, but at a certain point you are just nitpicking. It is not an inherent flaw for an animation to play. If the Luigi Logic animation played every single time there was something Luigi could interact with, then maybe I would agree with this. I would say, yeah, I really don't like that. This takes too much time to do. It would be a lot more fun if I could just do this instantly. However, the Luigi Logic cutscenes are only done to introduce new mechanics and only appear a relatively small amount of times throughout the entire game. Otherwise, it's just Luigi is glowing and then you press the button. No control is ever taken away from you. Like, I had to sit through this a double-digit number of times throughout the game. Like, okay, he may make it sound like that number is 90, but it's probably closer to like 30. The lengthy animation takes like 8 seconds, or in boss fights, it takes around 3 seconds. I was gonna count them up in my recorded footage to make a point about how minuscule it is, but I realized that's like looking for a needle in a haystack. So I decided that, unlike the Luigi Logic animation, this actually would be a complete waste of time. In my first 8 hours of gameplay, the animation happened 10 times, 2 of which were the 3-second version. Most of these were also in the span of 1 hour, because it plays when introducing a new mechanic, so naturally it's going to play more frequently early on and more sparsely as the game goes on. So more accurately, you're probably going to see the Luigi Logic animation around 1 to 2 times every 4 hours. That's 0.1% worth of time wasted! Think of what you could have done with those 16 seconds every 4 hours. After an entire year of continuous gameplay, that would add up to 9 hours of Luigi Logic cutscenes. 9 hours a year. Think about that. A good comparison to this would be opening treasure in a Zelda game. In the traditional 3D Zelda games, when you open a big treasure chest, a 5 to 8 second animation plays, depending on the game. This animation adds a lot of character and personality to the game. It's building up to something big. It gets you excited alongside Link to see what's inside. I kind of don't understand how you can review video games for a living and not understand this. Video games are not only about gameplay. Some surely can be, but most video games, even if the focus is the gameplay, are not only about gameplay. I've seen some people say that the sign of a great game is if you can take away all the story, all the music, all the visuals, and it's still fun to play. And yeah, that could demonstrate that the game has a really solid foundation. I would still enjoy playing Super Mario Bros. Without its music, and if all the game assets were just differently colored rectangles, that's true. What that argument fails to mention, though, is that I would enjoy it significantly less. I have fun with Mario's gameplay, but I also have fun because of its jolly soundtrack and its fun sound effects, and it makes me happy seeing all the weird creatures Mario has to fight. To put it simply, games are made for people, not robots. The priority doesn't always need to be efficiency. If something takes more time, but makes an experience more fulfilling, then it's usually best kept where it is. It's why meals have flavor even though we don't need it. It's why we chew food instead of just mashing it up and drinking it, because art isn't something to just consume and dispose of, it's something to experience. Imagine in a Zelda game, instead of the normal treasure chest animation, you walk by the treasure chest and it's automatically opened and you receive the item inside. You have a little icon in the corner that says it's been added to your inventory. On a replay of the game, this sounds great. I already know what it does, I want to use it as soon as possible so I can progress. But imagine this is your first playthrough and think of these two scenarios. Scenario 1, you open the treasure chest and you get this animation and some fanfare and a close-up of the item you got. As it shows you the item, it also gives a brief description of what it is and what it does. Scenario 2 is you walk past and get the item immediately. The treasure chest is suddenly open and you see that an item is added to your inventory. You don't know what it is or what it does. You might not even notice you got the item because it didn't seem particularly noteworthy or you were just focusing on other parts of the game as it was happening. With this alone, you could easily just get stuck not knowing how to proceed because you didn't realize you were just given a huge upgrade to your toolset. Afterwards, you would check your menu when you get stuck and feel like you've exhausted all your options, and you see this item there. You'd feel more frustration than satisfaction for figuring out how to proceed, because it would feel like you weren't given the heads up that you'd need it. I know that this is a bit of an exaggerated scenario, but in game design, it's important to recognize that players are not going to understand everything immediately. And obviously there's a middle ground with these two scenarios, where the animation can just not play, but you still get the item description and zoom in. That's true, but the long animation serves an important purpose. It gives whatever follows the animation more importance. In a Zelda game, I know when a long animation plays for a treasure chest that whatever is inside is going to be important. Whether you realize it or not, it's giving you a subconscious cue to give it more attention, to remember it. Luigi logic does the same thing. When I saw that animation play, all I could think was, wow, I wonder what kind of new things Luigi is gonna do. If it didn't have all that build-up and Luigi would do new things without warning, I would probably forget about a lot of them, or miss some of them, or at least miss details of how they work. I feel like without things like this, people would just be saying, where's all the fanfare? Why is it so boring? If you're upset about the Luigi logic animation, at that point, why not ask, why do I have to see Mario and Luigi celebrate and the flagpole reaching the top every time I level up? Because it's fun, and these games are supposed to be fun.
There are some classic feeling puzzles where the brothers actually work together, but they're generally very simple, boring setups revolving around basic objectives like carry this here and hit that button. It goes back to basics and it never moves beyond that.
He's straight up lying here. The puzzles get progressively more complex throughout the game. More segments where you need to change who's carrying an object, throwing it between each brother when needed. Multi-room puzzles where you need to bring objects from one room to solve a puzzle in another. The central gimmick of the amusement park where you use Luigi from a distance to change the layout of the maze. Also those number puzzles, they absolutely get more complex. Also, most of the game's puzzles involve Mario and Luigi working together, usually in tandem. I think the reviewer more so meant he wanted more puzzles where you separate the brothers and swap control between them. The thing is, the game is filled with puzzles like that, but like I said earlier, they're just streamlined now. Because Luigi logic doesn't have to waste your time with swapping Luigi out, losing control of Mario, positioning Luigi where you want him to be, and then starting the actual puzzle. Instead, Luigi automatically goes to where you need him so you can just focus on the actual puzzle rather than the setup.
The smartest new wrinkle in Brothership's combat are battle plugs, equipable modifiers that impact Mario and Luigi's power, defense, and more, comparable to if Paper Mario let you swap out which badges you were wearing at the start of each turn. Want to attack a whole group of enemies at once? Equip the Kaboom Attack Battle Plug to deal minor damage to every enemy adjacent to your main target. Or if you want to deal some extra damage to one target, the Surprise Iron Ball Battle Plug lets you drop a spiked iron ball on the enemy you attacked. To make things even better, some bonuses chain together. If you have both of those battle plugs equipped at the same time, you'll drop an iron ball on every enemy impacted by the shockwave of damage. Many battle plugs work together in smart, surprising ways, and it's one of the only areas of Brothership that doesn't spell everything out to you and allows you to piece together these powerful combinations using your own logic. My main annoyance with battle plugs, however, is that they each have a limited number of uses before they need to recharge, and the only consistent way to kick off the recharge process is to exhaust them to zero. It can lead to awkward scenarios where you only have 2 or 3 uses on a battle plug left and no way to spend it before going into a major battle. It's as if you needed to let your iPhone completely die before you could plug it in, and it feels a little clunky. Still, this mechanic makes the battles themselves some of the best in the series, and it's a shame you have to sit through the rest of Brothership to play them.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys know this, but phones are devices specifically designed for convenience, so of course you can charge them whenever. Battle plugs are a mechanic in a video game to add strategy to the game. The way they lose and gain charges is a deliberate choice made to challenge the player to use different plugs constantly and make sure that you can't always use the specific plug you want in a given situation. If you want a plug to be fully charged for a future battle, then when that plug is charged, don't use it in battles leading up to that. If you're in a battle where you want to use a specific battle plug, but it only has 1 charge left, too bad. If you could charge plugs between every battle, there would be no challenge. If that were the case, you could just always use the same plugs, and most of these plugs are made to last for longer than one regular battle. You're missing the entire point of this system. Battle plugs make it so your actions in one battle directly affect your future battles. You have to be smart and strategic with how you use battle plugs. I just think it's really funny that he opens this review saying the game feels solely made for children, and then when the game actually does something challenging, he fails to even realize it's an intentional challenge to the player. He thinks it's a flaw in the game's design. This really irks me because it's like saying, why can't I just have full BP? I want to use special moves, but sometimes you have to spend an entire turn refilling your BP just to use special moves on the next turn. It completely wastes your time. The developers really put this into the final game. No one noticed this? Like, yes, that's how the game works. Challenge, strategy. I say this with no sarcasm at all, but I really would like to see this reviewer talk about the rest of the series. I'd like to see how he critiques the rest of the series in comparison to this game. I'm also wondering if he played the rest of the series more recently, or if he's just looking back to when he played them when they were new and going off memory alone. I'm not saying he is doing that, I'm just saying that if he is, that's a very poor way to review a sequel. If you're comparing games this much, it's important to have fresh, unbiased views of both games. I actually tried to research him to see if he's said anything else about the rest of the series, but all I found was this podcast where he said he played Partners in Time as a kid and never equipped new armor or fought enemies, so he got to the final boss and then didn't beat it for 15 years.
Mario and Luigi, Partners in Time. It was the first game I ever got on the DS, just running through areas, avoiding all the enemies, and I have been stuck on the final boss for 14 years. A couple months ago, I finally went back, and I am wearing the base armor from the start of the game.
Leaving you, Logan.
Which is a fun story, I'm sure we all have something like that. But yeah, I couldn't find anything else on his Twitter or anything about the rest of the series. In preparation for Brothership's release, I replayed Superstar Saga, a game I'm very nostalgic for, but now playing it with a critical eye and playing Brothership right after, I can say that even though there are things I like in Superstar Saga I like more than Brothership, like its music, enemy variety, art style, character designs, I really do feel like Brothership is an objectively better game. This isn't really a review of Brothership, so I'm not going to go into detail about that, maybe in a future video, but I bring it up just because I think it's necessary to have a clear perspective of what you're comparing something to, instead of just looking at the past with rose-tinted glasses.
And even though the combat is the best part of Brothership, it still wears thin before the end of the adventure. Without going into spoilery specifics, the final third of the campaign is a complete slog that adds nothing of substance beyond retreading the mediocre exploration and puzzle solving of the first 20+ hours. Brothership kept stringing me along and running in circles to the point where I felt like it was disrespecting my time. I would probably have been left with a much more positive impression as a whole if it ended at the 25-hour mark, because even the combat started to feel tired and repetitive as I was going through the motions trying to reach the conclusion.
Calling the story generic is such an oversimplification that it kind of makes me question this reviewer's intelligence and literacy. Boiling it down to simply friendship is important is good if I ask for a 3-word synopsis on the story. But at that point, you can make any story sound generic and boring if you boil it down to just its main moral or message it's trying to get across. Like, Breaking Bad sucks, it's just drugs are bad. We all already know that, we're not children. See, didn't I just sound like a fucking idiot? Mario and Luigi Brothership's story may be specifically about friendship being important, but it also dives into that. It shows the dangers of isolating yourself from the rest of the world, and it shows that even if you think it's okay to completely close yourself off, you might not realize the damage you're doing. The way your own isolation can hurt the people around you. And even though there are hardships that come along with socializing and connecting with other people, ultimately it's part of what makes you human. To replace socialization with other things to keep yourself occupied, the world would collapse. We need connections in order to be whole. That's why I think it was such a fun and cute idea to literally make the world all about physical, tangible connections. Connector cables, Concordia, which is short for connection cord. You need to connect all these islands, not only literally by bringing them all together into this one spot so they can be accessed, but also you need to connect them figuratively. You need the people of these islands to no longer be separated from each other. They need to be able to go into the world and see the people they were separated from, and forge new connections with new people. I think one of the most powerful things the game does is that every single time you connect a new island, the entire game world changes. NPCs from new islands will be on your ship or on older islands, meeting new people or falling victim to Zocket. The way the world updates in this completely optional way just to make it feel more alive, it reminds me of Mother 3, honestly. Alright, we're going to be getting into spoiler territory here, so if you want to skip that, just go to this time code. If you haven't played the game yet and you're interested in picking it up at some point, I would definitely recommend skipping the spoilers. The story went in a lot of interesting directions I did not expect, and I feel very lucky I got to experience it blind. That said, if you don't care about spoilers, here you go. The specific choice to make Cosette be Zocket at first seems like a strange twist villain angle, and I'll admit my immediate reaction to it wasn't thinking it was the most ingenious writing choice. But as I sit with it, I realize that it's actually very effective at showing that this kind of thing could happen to anyone. Cosette specifically is the one that taught Connie how important connections are, how important bonds are to everyone, and I think it's really powerful that they specifically didn't say Cosette was forced to do these things. They were saying she was vulnerable to Reclusa and was able to be manipulated into feeling this way. Obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that in this fantasy setting, and she probably did act out of her own will, but I think it's a really effective way of saying that anyone, regardless of morals, can be sent down a dark path. In our weakest moments, that's often when we feel the most desperate and often make rash decisions that can hurt the people around us. Honestly, I think this is the best story of the Mario and Luigi series. It's not as action-packed, it doesn't have a ton of moving parts like Partners in Time or Bowser's Inside Story, but instead it's something deeply personal. The name of the game is Brothership, and when you first see that, it feels a little clunky, like, oh haha, they're brothers on a ship. But you come to realize as you play it that the central theme of the game is how close Mario and Luigi are. They're inseparable and they absolutely love each other, and their love for one another is what ends up saving the day. Look at how absolutely devastated Mario is to be separated from Luigi at the start of the game. The whole series always had them work together, it's called Mario and Luigi, but this is the first time where it really made it clear just how important their bond is. And I don't think it's a bad thing, nor do I think it's juvenile, to make a story about the importance of connections between people. Super Paper Mario is often revered as one of the greatest stories in a Mario game, and its central message is about love. It's a love story, and its whole thing is like, love conquers all. And it's not seen as juvenile. People usually say it's one of the darkest Mario games. Since we're into spoiler territory here, I figure this is a good time to mention the game's ending sequence right before the final boss. This to me signifies the return of Mario games being weird and creepy again. Something like the World of Nothing from Super Paper Mario, or when you actually get sent to hell in Super Paper Mario, or Mimi in Super Paper... a lot of shit from Super Paper Mario. There's a lot of creepy shit in Super Paper Mario, and I like it. There's also some cool creepy stuff in Partners in Time, but regardless of that, during the final act of the game, the true main villain, Reclusa, uses these plants that grab people by the head and indulge them in this fantasy world where they see all their loved ones and live their ideal, unchanging lives. This completely isolates them from the rest of the world, and Reclusa plans to use these so that eventually the world's population completely dies out. When you reach the end of the final dungeon and you go to fight Reclusa, the camera shifts, static fills the screen, and the screen shuts off. You then wake up in the Mushroom Kingdom. Everyone's congratulating you on saving the day and coming back home, and it's pretty clear that even Mario and Luigi were not immune to Reclusa's attack. As you progress through this virtual Mushroom Kingdom, the world keeps looping, the music progressively gets creepier, with more atonal, droning digital sounds, less natural instruments, and eventually what sounds like a digital recreation of a rapidly beating heart. This all culminates with a shot of Princess Peach in a dark hallway with a slow, distorted version of the Peach's Castle theme, and even a jump scare. This is the kind of thing I thought Mario games weren't even allowed to do anymore. I just think it's kind of silly to experience that entire sequence and come out of it thinking, this game has no depth and is for children. And I'm not saying like it's inappropriate for children, I'm just saying that even as an adult, it's a very compelling and interesting part of the story that had me on the edge of my seat. I also thought the cinematography was really impressive for this whole sequence. If shot more traditionally, this sequence could easily come across as normal, but the constant use of Dutch angles alongside the creepy sound design really sells this unsettling version of the familiar. I think the story is really impactful because on all of these islands, you're meeting new people and you're seeing the bonds they have and the connections they share with people. And then it's torn away from them. It's heartbreaking. And when you do save them, you have to leave them behind in order to get home. And that really got to me. I actually cried during the ending. The complaint that the third act of the game is too long or unnecessary is also just wrong. It's not even a matter of opinion. The final act shows you just how dire things have become. The world you spent the whole game bringing together and trying to help is worse off than ever. The people you've helped form new connections are now in a world of horror and despair, and if nothing is done, the entire population will die. At this point in the game, I couldn't bring myself to stop playing. If you actually connected with this story and these characters, you wouldn't be saying the game is taking too long. All of these parts are necessary to tell a full and complete story. The reviewer only thinks the game is poorly paced because by the end of the second act, he was praying for it to be over, because he didn't care about the game. Someone who wasn't in his position of having to review it probably would have quit the game, and that's okay. Not every game is for everyone. I play a lot of video games, and I always try to see the positives in them, even if I don't enjoy them. I also look for things I see as negative, even if it's a game I love and want to unabashedly praise. You know, last year I picked up the game Chrono Cross. I liked it a lot, and I played through a decent chunk of it, but sometimes when I play RPGs, I get tunnel vision, and I keep thinking, okay, I gotta keep playing this till I beat it. And then I get to several points where I think the game is gonna be at its finale soon, only to discover that the game has more to it than I thought. And because I play through it that way, with that mindset, now, despite being near the end of the game, I kind of burnt myself out, and I'm not sure when I'll go back to finally finish it. Is this a flaw of the game? Absolutely not. Because video games aren't created for me alone. Chrono Cross isn't a game that you should just try to get through as quickly as possible. It's a game where you need to take in its world and meet all of its crazy characters, learn about them, and lose yourself in how detailed its world is. If you keep chasing its main objective and feel this need to rush through it, it's gonna feel like a chore. Because you keep setting yourself up to think, okay, this is it. After this part, I'll finally be finished with it, finally have this game crossed off my list. And this isn't how a game like Chrono Cross is meant to be experienced. But I see more and more people thinking this way, and I've been guilty of it myself. It's a mindset I'm trying to break out of. The mindset that a game is something to be consumed and then disposed of. And yeah, most games the goal is to beat it and finish it, but the joy is in the journey. What joy is there to experience if you're rushing past every meticulously designed element because it's not required? Like all art, the best games will leave you still thinking about them after you've put them down. because they've succeeded in their mission to impact the player in a way that goes beyond simply completing every challenge they throw at you. Chrono Cross and Mario and Luigi Brothership both reward players for focusing on the personal lives of the characters in its world, rather than just what's required of them to complete the game. They're completely optional side objectives, but missions that make you feel accomplished for enriching the lives of the people around you give you a deeper connection to the world you're immersed in, and in turn give you powerful equipment or abilities as a reward for caring enough about the world they've crafted to see smaller things like that through. I really don't understand this train of thought. I've been seeing so many people just complaining that things take time. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. If you don't want to feel like your time's being wasted, then I don't think you should be playing video games that often. If playing video games becomes an internal test of whether or not it's a waste of your time, then you're not allowing the game to take you on the ride that it's trying to give you. It's like writing a book or any other kind of story. If you just describe the basic actions that happen, that's boring. You need world elements and people to make the world feel lived in, to make it feel real enough to suspend your disbelief, to make it interesting. A video game is an experience. It isn't solely gameplay. That's why we have stories and world building and animations and funny things to look at. Just because you don't find a certain thing entertaining doesn't mean it doesn't have value being there. But these kinds of things are entirely subjective. These are the points of the game where it's completely your own opinion. I think subjectivity and objectivity both have a role in a game's review, but if you give a game such a low score just based on, I didn't like these animations, I didn't find this story entertaining, you have to step back and see the value others might have there. Think about other perspectives. See if what you're complaining about really is an objective flaw of design, or if it's something that just didn't resonate with you personally. Because the point of a review like this isn't to air out your personal grievances. The point of a review like this is to let the masses see an objective view of the game's strengths and weaknesses, so they can make an informed decision. And because of that, I don't think subjectivity should be this much of a decider in the final score. The two viewpoints this reviewer has are that the game is too childish and easy, and that the game is too complex and it's wasting his time. And obviously, those completely contradict each other. Every time he talks about it being too complicated or wasting his time, he's venting his frustration that he has a deadline to hit, and those particular things are the roadblocks that got in his way of completing the game. The depth he wants out of this game is the very thing that's preventing him from enjoying it. Every time there's an actual challenge, the reviewer is too focused on completing the game due to his deadline to have anything but frustration towards the more complicated parts of the game. But that's more of a structural issue. Game reviewers are given very strict deadlines to give their reviews on time. And as we can see in this review, that can have a detrimental effect on the way they view the games that they should probably love. The game didn't disrespect his time, his job did. You might say that this video came out too late after the fact and is therefore irrelevant, it no longer matters. But I think it's another point in my favor that I actually had time to think and reflect here before putting my thoughts out there. Instead of ending on that salient point, I'm gonna end this video by listening to one more quote from the review and giving my thoughts on it.
Having the Mario Bros. Sail a giant island ship hybrid to uncover and explore new islands is a great idea on paper, but in practice, navigation boils down to a pretty unspectacular ocean map where you pick the next destination you want to sail to and wait as you inch your way there, and the results are utterly meaningless. I never felt any sense of discovery remotely approaching that of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, or even of the small open ocean segment of Paper Mario: The Origami King. I instead felt like a kid in the backseat on a road trip, just wondering if we were there yet.
Okay, that's your own damn fault. They never said it was gonna be like Wind Waker. You're just getting mad that the game isn't what you made up in your head. Silly. Hello everybody. Thank you for watching my video. I've spent like 9 months working on this. Very glad it's finally out. First off, want to give a big thank you to Levi and Charles for helping me with proofreading the script and finalizing it. Big thanks to Charles for helping edit all the audio. And a very big thanks to Cybershell for narrating the IGN review. I'd also like to extend thanks to Logan Plant for writing the review, because otherwise this video would not exist. And if anyone from IGN happens to be listening to this, even though I didn't like your review, I really liked your article on the DK artist mode in Donkey Kong Bonanza. Especially this first guy. You should feature this guy more. He's got some bold new ideas.
These are pretty cool bananas.
Anyway, that's my video. If you'd like to support me, I have a lot of ideas for future videos. So you could support me through Patreon, or if you'd like to actually get something in return, you can check my Etsy. I make figurines. I'm actually planning on making one of Connie from Brothership. That's in the works. And if you'd like to follow me anywhere else, just go to oprahzeb.com. It has all my endeavors there. Who knows, maybe once I actually get patrons, I'll start putting their names in the credits of these videos. But anything helps. If you like this video, if you could share it around to friends or just leave a comment, it would mean a lot. I would love to discuss this further. The reason I put this video out in the first place was specifically because I had so many thoughts about the Brothership review, and it just got exhausting saying them over and over again. So I just kind of wanted to air it all out here, so I don't have to repeat myself. Anyway, thanks again. I'm rambling. Bye-bye.